This is Henry Frederick of Headline Surfer, and to my left is Stan Escudero, who writes the political blog called The Guidepost, and to my right is Dana Doherty Swanson, who writes a political blog as well called Dana's Docket. This is the Roundtable. So, Stan and Dana, we've got two topics to discuss this week. One is the Jason Davis media saga, and the second is the fiscal cliff. So we'll start with Jason Davis. So in our opening segment, let's get right into it on Jason Davis. He's, as people know, he's the county chair. He won overwhelmingly by a plurality of 20,000 votes over Carl Persis in the general election, and he has found himself in the eye of the storm, so to speak, with several stories written in the News Journal, taking a closer look at his, I guess his candidacy or his viability or whatever. Stan, what do you make of it?
Well, it seems to me there are people, including some in the News Journal, who are finding it very difficult to come to terms with Jason's victory. Perhaps because they were supportive, or some of their friends were supportive of Mr. Persis. But they've been going after Jason hammer and tongs ever since he got elected. The man isn't even sworn in yet. I think that one article, or maybe even two, suggesting that he has a tough road ahead of him, which would have been true for anyone elected to county council chair position at this time, would have been called for, but up to 4 or 5. I think they've crossed the line over into the level of scurrilous, and I would say that they really need to get used to the fact that Jason is there, and they ought to give him a chance to see what he does. It's simply wrong to try to undermine a man's position, or a woman for that matter, any newly elected person who has a difficult job. Wrong to undermine their position in advance like this.
Dana, like Stan says, it's pretty unusual to have this kind of thing. Prior to the November 6th general election, Jason Davis was kind of like the afterthought. Didn't even get included in a Tiger Bay debate with when it was then Jason Davis, Ted Doran, and of course Carl Persis. Why do you suppose the News Journal suddenly noticed Jason Davis now?
Well, sour grapes, because, like you said, a lot of the people did not think of Jason Davis as a viable candidate, so they did not do as maybe a thorough checking as they thought. And even though Jason was clearly cleared of any wrongdoing in the past, if they had done whatever checking, they would have tried to do a smear campaign prior to the November election and try to use all this stuff, which of course has proved that all charges were dismissed. He was cleared of any wrongdoing, yet there's now bringing it up after the fact because, his campaign actually won and we thought the other guys, and we were courting the other guys, and now, oops. So sour grapes, and we want to go after him now. We want to make his life miserable because we had egg on our face.
Well, let's backtrack for a minute before I ask you to continue commenting. Jason Davis was at my home the day before Thanksgiving for a video interview where he was doing a Thanksgiving message to the public. I figured that was an honor for a candidate who had come a long way, considering we didn't endorse him for office. But when we did the interview, we had to narrow it down for the message for Thanksgiving, and we have some stuff left, but that will run, as we move forward. But one of the things that we did focus on was the gas tax and his concern about, trying to rein in county spending and give some relief to the taxpayers of Volusia County. And it struck me as odd that afternoon of Thanksgiving, suddenly the News Journal had this breaking story online about the gas tax and how it would be to the destruction of Volusia County's already crumbled road system. And of course the gas tax is at the highest maximum. Stan, you can give us the numbers in a second, but basically it's the highest levels that you can charge. And the roads are atrocious anyway, which makes you wonder what they're really spending the money on. Then after that story ran on the day of Thanksgiving afternoon, the following Sunday, that weekend, there was an editorial by an opinion piece by the editor of the News Journal, Pat Rice, in which he said that if Jason Davis were to continue doing what he was going to do, with trying to make these big announcements, that he would end up getting shot down and would just be marginalized to the point where he'd just be one of 7 votes and doing ribbon cuttings. So that's, and then of course that day they had a big story about Orange Avenue, Daytona, and it's like the county's worst road, and how they need all this money for the repairs. Although they didn't spell out in the story where the money has been going to, but it certainly hasn't been going to the roads. And not to the extent that this max tax is showing. So there's that story, but that wasn't enough. Then it was a story about a kitchen cabinet. Apparently Davis, he told me he had been talking to different people, from Ted Doran, his former opponent, to Frank Bruno, to Stan Escudero with the Republican Party and others, about getting some ideas for consensus building and where he should go as he's learning the ropes, because this is his first public office. And then if that wasn't enough, they did another story, this one on an arrest situation where both he and his former wife were charged with fraud, and apparently she was the perpetrator of all this, and he ended up getting brought into it because there was a mutual bank account or something. Anyway, what happened was he was acquitted of the charge of fraud with her before the case even went to trial. Is that correct, Stan?
Yes.
Okay, so
And it was 12 years ago.
well, 11, 12 years, right, almost a dozen years ago. But a few days ago, a headline appeared on the front page, on the right-hand side, what they call the well, on a big headline, arrest of county manager, in 2001, blah, blah, blah. And in the secondary line is the word charge. The word arrest is something that we in journalism are encouraged not to use in a headline or anywhere else, for that matter, without saying arrested on a charge of. And if a person's already gone through the system and he was acquitted, or not even acquitted, the charge was dismissed before he went to trial by the prosecutor, then a more appropriate headline would have been charged with something that was dismissed. But the word arrest, that troubles you. Well, tell us why, Stan.
Well,
Beyond the obvious reasons.
well, the obvious reason is that it implies that Jason was somehow or another involved. And the investigation...
That he's a criminal.
Yes. The investigation at the time determined that while Jason's wife committed a felony, indeed more than one felony, and she was arrested and did prison time for this, long before the matter ever came to trial, the investigators determined that not only was Jason not involved, he was wholly unaware. And consequently, any charges against Jason were dropped without prejudice, just completely swept away, and it never existed. Thereafter, and at some point thereafter, Jason and his wife were divorced for what seems to me obvious reasons, and I did ask Jason about this when the article appeared, and he said, well, that's why they call them ex-wives.
I mean, and beyond that, Dana, Jason told the News Journal in the article that they had done a story on him 4 years ago when it was first brought up, when he ran for Congress, and he wasn't, he didn't get very far in that election. He didn't make out a primary, but they interviewed him, they took a picture of him, and the way the changes in the News Journal have been the last 4 years with new ownership and that kind of thing, and transitions through the internet where they've, a lot of their stories have gotten lost in links and things like that. Is it plausible, like Jason saying that, hey, look, you already had this story, why are you bringing it up now?
It had been reported in the past. It's not like it was hidden. It's just people didn't.
Why not? Why now? Why not during the election season?
But that's what I mean.
Wouldn't that have been a better excuse for the News Journal if they wanted to go after
If
him?
they wanted to do a smear campaign, that they could have done it way back when, before the election. So now, for them to bring it up, and the fact that they had it 4 years ago means they've already reported on it, so why bring it up now after he's already been elected? It just now is like, we don't like that you got elected, so now we made an oops and we didn't bring up this story during the campaign, but we're gonna just bring it up now, even though they've already done it 4 years ago. Doesn't make any sense. And when you're talking about the gas tax, another thing, it'd be devastating for us about the gas tax. I don't think so, because in the last probably 6 times I filled up my car, 4 of them have been in Seminole County.
Where gas is, and even Orange County and Brevard County, where gas can end up being anywhere from 5 to 20 cents cheaper.
I work in Seminole County. I wait and fill up my car in Seminole County most of the time, unless I'm getting so low that I have to fill it up in Volusia County. But most of the time, I fill up on my way to work. As soon as I cross into Seminole County, hit the gas station there that I know is cheaper, and that's when I fill up. If you lowered the gas tax, all of these people that are going to go across the bridge will then fill up here and you'd have more revenue.
Stan, very briefly, because we're going to close this segment. If the News Journal is going after, or the perceptions of the News Journals, they're saying they're just doing what they would do to, and for any candidate,
Well, of course,
prior to swearing in on January 10th. Is this unprecedented from your point of view in terms of the vetting of this candidate who's now won the election?
Well, there have only been, of course, 2 county chairs in Volusia County, and certainly they didn't attack Frank Bruno.
They've been there for
But,
8 years and 20 years altogether.
Well, exactly, but to my knowledge, and I confess to not having done thorough research on this, but to my knowledge, Jason has already been subjected to more attacks before he's even sworn in than other county council members have been in the first year of their term, going back as far as one wants to go. I don't think there is any question, although of course one could never prove it, but in my opinion, there is no question but what this is a politically motivated attack. And I think that's a great shame because Jason has a good vision for the future of this county. And if the News Journal is successful in making it more difficult or even precluding Jason from working within the council to help realize this vision, I think then that a good deal of the blame for what befalls the county in the future that's bad will attach to the News Journal.
Well, Dana, one last question from you. Jason is one of 3 Republicans. The 2 of you are Republicans. I didn't endorse, Headline Surfer did not endorse Jason Davis, to be clear about that. Jason Davis has an opportunity now to really make some headway with, even though it's a nonpartisan situation, everybody knows politics, party politics play into it. You think that's the real threat here, that maybe there would be a lot of changing in terms of, what newspapers get in terms of revenue and that kind of thing?
I really think so, because I think Jason really wants to, work with all people, regardless if they're Republican, Democrat, but also the fact is he is really concerned about how we're spending the public's money. And he wants to make sure the county is accountable for every cent.
Well, with that, that'll conclude our opening segment, and we'll be back for the fiscal cliff.